Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me and welcome to Divorce WTF Now podcast. If you're thinking about a divorce or have decided a divorce might be your only option, this podcast might be a little helpful. My guess is if you are thinking about a divorce, that you've been thinking, stressing, or debating that decision for a really long time, months, maybe even years. My name is Lori Wood, and I'm a certified family law mediator and divorce specialist. I've been helping people navigate divorce for almost 30 years. I also went through a divorce myself in 2013. The truth is, I thought about the decision for years before I actually made it. I asked my friends and a few family members for their advice. I was hoping that they could make it for me. And I guess that was kind of the chicken way out, but I was hoping. They didn't and they couldn't. So again, the decision was back on me and I drooled over the decision. One of the hardest parts of the decision is my ex-husband is and was a pretty good guy. There was no affair or horrible act that would have made the decision easy or clear. We just grew apart and it wasn't working anymore. It hadn't been working for a long time. During our marriage, we suffered a lot of loss, the death of parents, just a lot. Couple that with the everyday stress, and at some point we decided to turn out and away from each other to cope instead of turning inward and helping each other through it. Without realizing, we just shut down, and over time, there was no way back. Today, I want my focus to be more on the decision-making process than the aftermath and what happens after you make a decision. And again, as I'd mentioned, I had painstakingly grumbled over this decision and the stress of the decision for a long, long time. I was fearful of breaking up the family, even though our daughter was grown and out of the house creating a life of her own. I stressed over disappointing family and feared change and feared of finances. And it just kept me stuck and created great anxiety. And I do this for a living. I know the ins and outs of divorce, but it was really difficult for me to make the choice for myself. If you're in the same position or you've been contemplating a divorce, whether it's a day, a month, or a year that you've been thinking about it, I understand exactly where you are. While I can't and would never tell you what to do, I'm hoping that by me sharing my experiences, both personally and professionally with you, it'll help with the decision or at least let you know that you're not alone. I want to make something clear though before we go much further. I am not in any way advocating or trying to persuade someone to get a divorce. It's your decision and yours alone, and it's a really difficult one. With that said, if you've tried everything you can to save your marriage or to create the marriage that you want, well, if you've done that, you wouldn't be contemplating divorce. I always ask my clients when they come in to see me and say they want a divorce, if they're sure, and if they've tried everything that they can, whether it's couples counseling, which my husband and I tried, whether they do marital mediation with me or go to a couples retreat or go to their church, whatever it is. I'm just hoping that they've tried something to not just save the marriage, but create the marriage they want, to be happy in the marriage. And I ask for two reasons. The first being, I think people use the D word too much, or they have a fight, or marriage is stressful and it's more work than they thought, and they choose divorce. But I also ask because if you do decide that divorce is the right option, if you've tried everything you can and can walk away saying you've given it 100%, then you won't what if yourself to death after you make the decision. Now, of course, it takes two people to make a marriage work, and sometimes the other party or your spouse takeaways are option. And I understand that that's incredibly painful when we're blindsided or staying in a marriage is no longer a choice. It's just, it's kind of hellish. And it's one of the most painful things that we can go through. But today in this podcast, we're just focusing on when it is our option or our choice. How do you know when to call it quits? How do you know divorce is right and maybe your only option? Here are some questions to ask yourself if you've been contemplating divorce. Number one, do you find yourself in a good mood, happy during the day when you're away from your home or you're away from your spouse? And that your mood changes when you get home, when you're around your spouse. And I'm just talking about if you guys have had a fight or if the two of you are going through a rough patch. But as a rule, if you're out and about working or with your friends and you're in a great mood, but the minute you walk through that door, it's like a personality change and you're stressed angry, frustrated when you're around your spouse? Number two, are you and your spouse living with connection, intimacy, laughter, conversation, or communication? Or are you two living separate lives under the same roof? If someone were watching you guys from afar and seeing you go through your everyday life, would they think you were spouses, roommates, or strangers? How would you be perceived? If you stepped out and looked at the daily routine, how would you characterize yourselves? And lastly, if your spouse is on their way home and you're dreading their arrival, if you found yourself wishing something would happen and they wouldn't come home, that may be a telltale sign. Well, I'm sure you feel incredibly guilty for having those thoughts. It happens. We want sometimes to take the easy way out or not have to make such a big decision. But when we wish harm on someone, even if it's someone we love, just so we don't have to see them or deal with things, it's probably time to go. Or maybe it's answered the question for you. Marriage should be beautiful, sacred, happy, and fill you up. It shouldn't feel like a prison sentence, drag you down, make you miserable. Life is too short to spend unhappy, stressed, angry, or dreaming of a different life. If you and your partner are not making each other happy, again, building each other up, supporting each other, or exciting each other, it's not okay. Things need to change. And if they can't, and you've tried to change them, divorce maybe is the right option for you. You can weigh all the pros and cons, pray, meditate, do whatever you can. If you've done that and tried to save the marriage or know that it just can't be saved, maybe you are not making that decision because of fear. I was so scared. Number one, I didn't want to disappoint my family. I didn't want to break up a family. I didn't know what it would look like. After I got divorced, I feared the change. I feared the finances. I just feared everything. I kind of tried to outrun it. I mean, it took me years to make the decision. Once I did, I worried about the conversation with my spouse. I had twirled it up in my head a million times, and then I started changing my routines. I didn't want to utter the words, I'm going through a divorce, to anybody if they asked me how I was doing. So after I sat down and had the conversation with my spouse, and I can honestly say that it went much better in person than it did in my head. I mean, it wasn't pleasant for at all, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And it turns out he wasn't happy either, and he hadn't been for a long time. Once we were on the same page and we knew we were getting divorced, again, I still was really fearful, and I just didn't want to utter the words and tell people what was going on. I didn't want them looking at me with pity or sympathy. I didn't want them cocking their head and going, oh, I'm so sorry. So I started changing my routine. I changed hairdressers, and women, as you know, that is not an easy thing to do. I changed nail places. I changed everything. I just didn't want to utter the words. But then there just came a time where I accepted it and I just couldn't outrun it anymore. So I'd start telling people, but I'd only tell them as much as I wanted them to know. It was my business. It's your business. You know, people weren't part of your marriage. They don't necessarily have to be part of your divorce. You only give the information that you want. You know, I kind of had to start telling people I couldn't explain away the U-Haul in my driveway, or, you know, I had to say something when we were invited to couple events. But you go at your own pace once that decision's made, and share what you're comfortable sharing. A lot of the times, our friends and family members, while they won't make the decision for you, they've got a lot of advice for you after the decision's made. And I know they love you and they have your best interest at heart, but it can be very overwhelming and confusing. This is your choice, your decision, and you just have to move through it doing what feels right for you. I do want to say one thing. I said I was fearful of telling my husband I wanted to divorce, and I meant fearful of disappointing him, his reaction, but I never feared that he would harm me in any way. Like I said before, he's a good guy. But if you're in a relationship or a marriage and you have to have a serious discussion and your safety is a question, your safety is the most important thing. Have a third party there. Tell them in a public place. Do whatever you can to make sure that you are safe. And that's a topic for another day, but your safety is the most important thing. Protect yourself. The bottom line, I guess, first and foremost, I want to say I'm so sorry that you're in this place, making this decision, stressing over this decision, contemplating the divorce. I know how difficult and disappointing it can be, just to say the least. But if that's where you are, you're not alone. You deserve to be happy, and so does your spouse. If the two of you can't do that for each other, as scary as it is to set the other free, the fear will subside and you will be okay. In fact, after a while, you'll be better than okay. Could you say that if you stayed in your marriage? And one last thing before I go. Again, I am a certified mediator and certified divorce specialist and coach. If you need somebody in your corner, if you need somebody to support you, if you need somebody to help you find tools to move forward easier or to help you navigate the process of divorce, give me a call. I would love to help. I can not only help you lessen your anxiety and avoid making permanent decisions based on temporary emotions, I can help you navigate the process. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you all. Stay safe, and please, if you need someone in your corner, give me a call. Take care.